Welcome back, everybody. I'm your host, Patrick, aka the original PedXing, and we are continuing our series on how to Megasquirt your Miata. In this episode, episode 4, we're going to be going through the process of wiring up the pigtail for the IAT, intake air temperature sensor. And this wiring process is similar to pretty much all the types of connectors in an automotive environment. So this can be used in a variety of situations. Now, why do we need to do this? Well, in the Megasquirt, we have a pressure sensor, not an airflow sensor, which is stock to the Miata, known as the MAF or AFM. We're getting rid of that, and we're replacing it with the pressure sensor, and it also needs to know air temperature. So we're going to be wiring up this connector and also the terminals that go to the car side so that we can plug this in and get going. So without further ado, we'll get to the video already in progress. One last thing we have to set up before we can actually start the install is the air intake sensor, temperature sensor, which I got the kit from DIY Auto-Tune. And basically it comes with the sensor, which is a GM sensor, and a pigtail. And so you've got this little guy, and this is the back part of it. And so this just is a little rubber fitting, and it just sort of pries out. So I took a little tool and I just stuck it in there and just kind of pried it out carefully so as not to rip it. And then that exposes the back part of the connector here. And you'll also get 3 of these pins, which are crimp blade style connectors. This is what's going to be on the car side of this harness that you're going to make, and you're just going to crimp these down, and this is going to plug into some pins in the MAF sensor, and we'll get to that during the install, but this is going to be at the end of this wire. And then you have these, which are the connector pins that go in here, and you'll see here there's a little tab that sticks up right there on the back, and that little tab is going to go in the little slot. You'll see these 2 slots right there. It's going to go in the slot for each side, so you can see how they kind of work. It's going to insert that way. So you're going to crimp these down, you're going to feed the wire through, or you could feed the wire through ahead of time, that might be easier. And then crimp it down, and then it's going to slide in like this. And it won't fit right now because it's not crimped down, but once you crimp it right here, you'll be able to slide that in. And so for the crimping, we're going to use the back part of my stripping tool. This is not the best crimper in the world, but it should do the job. And any one of these little small indentations will be there, and so what will happen is you're gonna those little leads are going to be bent over. They're going to go into the U shape, the U portion, and as you crimp down, the U pushes them inwards, and so that's how you get a good crimp, is that the U part of this pushes those little leads inwards, and it's going to crimp down on the wire. And then it's basically the same thing. This is just a little bit bigger actually, so it's easier to see. You can see the little U portion. They give you an extra one, but so you're only going to use 2 of these. And so the top part usually goes around the actual insulation. It's just for stress relief. And then the bottom part is what the actual crimp is to the wire. So the wire should insert basically to the base of this the little tab in the middle that's sticking up should not go all the way to the blade. It should basically just be right at that little indentation there. And then you can kind of peel these off. Just kind of break these off with a little tab here, and then we should be good to go. Here's a closer view of the crimping action. So this little
spike right here is going to be on the back side of the connector, and the open side of the connector is going to be in this U that I mentioned before. And so as you push down, the U is going to cause the crimp to close and kind of fold over onto the wire, and then you'll push down kind of hard, and it'll give you like a little crimp in the middle. Now this particular tool is just barely adequate for doing that on this size of connectors. This is a little bit large actually. So when I crimped it, I then went in and did this, just kind of pushed it down a little bit more to get a firmer crimp. And if you're cheap like me and you don't want to buy a crimpy tool just for those little connectors that you're going to use every once in a while, then you can get away with that, plus maybe put a little solder in.
All right, so we crimped down one and inserted it, and basically when you slide this back in, you're going to feel it engage, and you're just going to slide it back through, kind of hold the rubber connector in there, but it's no big deal because you can always reorient it. So you make sure that the tab is sliding in to the little slot, and should be a little bit of a tight fit, and then right when you slide it all the way home, there should be a little kind of click. Let's see if we can pick that up. Not really, it was very soft. Okay, all right, so this is on there, and basically just going to be plugging this in like so to the connector. So I'll wait to do that once we have this screwed in. So that should do it, and then we'll just go through the same crimping action on the other side. The wire, by the way, it's one wire, so I just pulled it out, divided it in half, and clipped it like that, so that it would be one thing. And then I did one final test just to make sure. Bring in your ohm meter and just do a double check that your crimp was good, and then you should be all set. All right, just to show what the process looks like. So we're just going to go in here and clip off about 1/4 of an inch so that it lays down on there about like that. And here's one that I've already done. So basically it's just going to sit in here just about like that. And we'll get our clipper, try to get this in frame. And let's see here. Try to get a little better angle on this. Alright. So we're going to clip it about like this. And that just pops that off, so super easy. And we're just going to lay that in there and crimp it. Basically the top one, like I said, goes around the insulation, and the bottom one is what actually crimps to the thing. Alright, crimp those down. I didn't like the crimps on these for some reason. The metal was a little stiffer, and it seemed like my tool was struggling with it, so they were solid. I mean, they wouldn't pull out, but I decided to solder them as well. So I put a little dab of solder in there, and it just improves the connection. The crimp is the mechanical connection really, and the solder just helps ensure that the electrical connection is perfect. So then I crimped it down around the insulation as well to make sure it's not going to tug out or anything. These are just going to plug into that harness, and then you're just going to tape up the harness in the car to ensure that it's not going to pull out. But so this should be good to go.